The webinar has started and we are live. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Tim. Welcome, Ingo. Ingo, unfamiliar background. Where are you located right now?
I'm at the one second Hotel de Rome, which
Hotel de
is
Rome.
in Berlin. A bit confusing. I was at a all-day event, and now I found a quiet spot in the bar, which I hope won't open until after this webinar is finished.
A quiet spot in the bar. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's, if you want, it's just like, yeah, this is what it looks like. Yeah.
Nice. So an unfamiliar situation, but we make sure that all the technical.
Yeah, but we're familiar in our topic, right?
That
So
is
that's
that's the main point. I see people joining right now, coming in, and I think we have something really interesting prepared
did you
today. What are you asking?
no, should I start sharing maybe?
Yes, please start sharing. Um, People joining right now, the session. Perfect. Yeah, okay, let's start. Welcome everybody to today's webinar, to today's session on the topic of the triple win in RGM. And how to align manufacturers, retailers, and shoppers to create value for everybody. I think we have a very interesting topic prepared today. We also have two interactive elements, so stay tuned for some polls that we are opening. And as always, the question that I like the most to ask in the beginning is, where are you joining in from? If you could quickly type into the chat where you're joining in from. I think we three are from different cities in Germany right now. Cologne, I see Frisco, Texas, I see Paris, Riga, San Francisco Bay Area. Wow. Ghent, Austria. Nice. Such a multinational crowd today again. Thank you so much for joining. And yeah, if you go to the next slide, Ingo. We have two amazing speakers today with us, as always. Oh, no, it's the Buynomics part. Sorry, I confused that. Quickly on Buynomics. Most of you will know that already, but at Buynomics, we help companies make smarter and faster decisions in revenue growth management. With our virtual shoppers AI technology, we simulate real-world shopper behavior with up to 95% predictive accuracy. With that, we enable holistic optimization of not only pricing, promo, PPA, but also portfolio mix, costs, while accounting for competitive dynamics and retailer pressures. And our customers, including Nestlé, Unilever, and L'Oréal, see up to 4% higher gross profits and save up to 80% of their time spent on analysis. And without further ado, I will give the stage to you, Ingo. And we start with the topic. I will be in the chat moderating and sharing the polls whenever they're ready. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jonathan, for the introduction. So, and just to conclude here, I'm Ingo, co-founder, managing director of Buynomics, and I have with me Tim Schneider, who's leading our sales engineering, who will guide you through a demo. There's, I would say, just so much you can do on a slide or explain on a presentation in a simplified form. When it gets real, then we need other technology, and Tim will guide you through like a not the full complexity of a triple win situation, but something that resembles that to a meaningful degree, much more than we can do on a simple slide. So as Jonathan already hinted, without further ado, let's get into the topic and start with a quick reminder of why we're talking about triple win. Because, and these are just some random example, we could have had others from the news where the conflicts in not achieving a triple win or at least a double win for manufacturer and retailer became so large that the consequences of them became public in the form of, in this case here, news of actual news, because retailer and manufacturers couldn't align on their interest, and that resulted in a delisting or some other kind of conflict that became public. Of course, that's something we often want to avoid. It's probably impossible to always avoid, but I think this is a reminder why this topic is so important, that we need, when we make RGM changes, that we need to find a solution that benefit all the parties. Otherwise, there's always room for conflict here in the case in the relationship retailer manufacturer. But there are also cases, of course, where a change didn't make sense for the consumer, for the shopper in the end, and they became upset. And then these are the cases we want to avoid, and that's why we're dealing with the triple win in this case here. So before we do that, let's start, as we always should, with a very brief definition or understanding of what we mean by a triple win. I think it's like naively very straightforward. Triple win is when all the participants, the shopper, the retailer, the brand, the manufacturer, do gain when we make a change in with our RGM lever, be it with pricing, be it with promotions or PPA or other changes in our portfolio. Those are the changes, and we want everyone to win. And for manufacturer, that means typically something like an increase in net revenue or market share. For the retailer, that typically also means higher sales, higher revenue, and an increase in customer loyalty. And for the shopper, it means that they get better products, more value for their money, which is often a bit difficult to measure. And what we sometimes use here, or what we're using here in the example, is the number of units sold as a proxy for an increase in shopper value. So when shoppers buy more, that is an indication that they benefit from the changes that we make. So more, or when they buy more valuable products. And here we have our first survey, and I think I need to rely on Jonathan to get that started.
Yes, first survey, first interactive poll. Let me quickly pull up the element launching the question. Yes, reading for all attendees joining by phone. What most often prevents a triple win from happening in your experience? Answer option 1, difficult retailer negotiations. Option 2, lack of price transparency between stakeholders. Option 3, fear of losing competitiveness. Option 4, misaligned incentives internally, or shopper needs not fully understood. And if you type in other, please specify in the chat. We already have a participation of 40%. Let's get this to 60%, and then I will share the results with you so we get a glimpse of our audience experience with the triple win concept. Okay, 5 more seconds. So please log in your final answers. And I'm ending the poll now and sharing the results. First question to you, Ingo. Would you have expected those answers?
Yes, I'll reason. Maybe Tim, you can answer first.
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think yeah, seeing difficult retailer negotiations on the top of the list, which makes a lot of sense. I think Ingo showed in the beginning also these examples. So that's always let's say a relationship that's very tricky. And of course, these negotiations are also very tricky. And I think on the second place here with the fear of losing competitiveness, that I can also fully understand. I think for that is so important to really understand how shoppers would actually react in the market when aiming for such a strategy. What do you think, Ingo?
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, these are the two like cornerstone, the other two parties, right? The retailer and the shopper, and of course that makes a lot of sense for us. Perfect. Then let's continue. So the way we want to approach the topic is essentially by splitting up the triple win into two parts. The first one deals with the manufacturer and retailer relationship, what we can say about that. And then in the second step, we will look at retailer and shopper, retailer and manufacturer together, assuming that we've sort of solved the challenges we have between these two parties, and then compare it to the shopper perspective, and then putting it all together, we can discuss the triple win. We'll do that in a theoretical way, very simplified. I think it makes sense to like qualitatively understand the relationships that are here important. Again, that's why we're afterwards showing a demo with Tim, is that for real challenges, it's of course much more detailed and complicated than what we can capture on slides here. So, but it's important to get an understanding of the basic concepts. And the first one I think we want to discuss is the manufacturer and retailer relationship here. And I think what's important to understand here is that there's sort of a prisoner's dilemma relationship between manufacturer and retailer here, and I don't want to explain the prisoner's dilemma here in more detail, because last time I did that, I sort of went into like a 15-minute rabbit hole, because it's once you start explaining it, it's much more complicated than you think. And I think everyone has a sufficient. Just assume that everyone has a sufficient understanding of the concept, and you can look at Wikipedia or anywhere on the net to get an understanding. But I think what's important is that in many cases, and this is one of them, and it's important to recognize the form of it, is that when two parties make independent decisions, they can be worse off than aiming for a joint decision. So, and we have that same relationship here between manufacturer and retailer, where together they can make a much better decision than when they each optimize themselves separately. And this example here really highlights this fact. Also, it's an extreme case. I don't expect anyone to have in their real job these large differences, but it serves to highlight the challenge that we hear. So we have a very simple basic case, but that's all we need here. So we have a situation where we have a price elasticity of -2, bit high, but I think reasonable, or within a reasonable range, and it's constant everywhere. So we have a demand function like this dotted line or this full line, this bold line here. So where we have essentially an exponential demand curve and a constant price elasticity. The unit cost for the manufacturer are €1 per unit, and that means the profit optimal margin is 50%. So in the profit optimum, what we're using here is that relationship, I think that everyone should know, and almost everyone knows, is that margin times price elasticity is -1 in the profit optimum. So you know if you're optimal or not. This of course only counts for a single product. If there are more products, then it's a bit different. If you're interested in that part of those details, we have lots of white papers and one-pagers on our website where we explain all of these concepts. So with this, if the manufacturer independently optimizes the price, the profit optimal net price for the manufacturer at which the manufacturer sells to the retailer would be €2, right? 50% margin. And again, the profit optimal price for the profit optimal margin for the retailer is also 50%. So it would go to sell at a shelf price of €4. And if we go through the math with these demand functions here, we get a total revenue of 2,500 in this case, and total profit for both of them of 1,875. If we have joint optimization, then with the 50% margin we have for both retailer and manufacturer, what's achievable is a revenue of 5,000 and a total profit of 2,500, both significantly higher than what would be the separate optimization of each of the parties. So this highlights the challenge that we have. So this, of course, this example is extreme, and we're using it to highlight the challenge or the problem the two parties face here. But the message is really that if we achieve a joint optimization that makes sense for both, we can typically be much better than if we have independent optimization. And also what we know from the prisoner's dilemma, it's difficult to resolve, but it's easy in a single case, but it's easy to resolve if we are in a repeated game. So if two prisoners play again and again and again, and both interested in a long-term relationship, it's typically solvable. And this is, I think, also the second analogy that's very useful for the relationship. If everyone's looking for long-term success, then it should be possible to overcome this challenge. So with this in mind, what it actually comes down to is when we look at the benefit for manufacturer and profit, if we can achieve the joint optimum which we want to aim for, or even if before we do that, there are essentially two questions. One is first win-win, achieving the joint optimum, so finding the best joint price, or if we have a full portfolio, finding the best optimal portfolio and optimal prices across the different products for both of them, and then determining how to split the benefit between the two. So these are the two tasks. Of course, we can't go in a 30-minute webinar through all the details. There are, of course, some complexities that come from the asymmetry. Retailers have also other relationships with other manufacturers. Both parties don't know each other's costs. Therefore, it's difficult to understand, like in full detail, how the other side benefits from a deal. But in general, these are the two things that need to be solved between manufacturer and retailer: achieving the joint optimum, and then finding the right power balance that reflects the strengths of the two parties and their strategic objectives. Of course, I won't go through all the details, but there are some complications, particularly in the second point. But the first one is very straightforward, and I think Tim will go through that case as well. Once we've resolved the manufacturer-retailer relationship, we need to talk about the relationship between manufacturer and retailer together versus the shopper. And what we see here as benefit is essentially this type of graph that more or less, or in similar ways, many have seen in economics, is the standard profit optimization graph in a somewhat different way. So what we have here is we have a demand curve. If prices go up, sales go down. And depending on that and the costs, we have the total profit of manufacturer and retailer. And the benefit for the shoppers is this triangle here. Where does this come from? So the rectangle, everyone I think has seen in economics books, but the shopper here earns this triangle. And how does this appear? We have different shoppers with different willingness to pay, and the ones who have a higher willingness to pay, the darker blue ones here, with a higher willingness to pay than the price, they will buy the product at this price. And this one has only a very slightly higher willingness to pay than price, so gets only very little benefit out of it up here. And this one has a very high willingness to pay for the product, gets lots of benefit from the product. So, and if we add them all up down here, we get this triangle. And what you can easily see is that when we increase the price, the profit curve gets the green area gets larger to a certain point, but the triangle always gets smaller with higher price. So that's the relationship. If we compute that for different prices, we get essentially these curves. We get the green one for the shopper. So with higher price, shoppers always lose in this case, and the manufacturer retailer together, the orange curve, they have an optimum, which is like the traditional profit optimization. Margin times elasticity is -1. This is this curve, and the blue one is the sum of the two. And what you can already see is that typically the joint optimum for retailer, manufacturer, and the shopper is less than just the profit optimum for retailer and manufacturer. So this optimization is much more difficult. So I think what we see also in the customers we work with is that it's typically, unless you're priced very highly, very difficult to achieve a triple win with just price changes. Particularly in this simplified case with just one product, it's typically impossible, because it can only be possible if you have already a very high price where you're above the profit optimum. So typically the triple win comes from an optimization. If you have different products and you're below the optimum, where you can work with prices, but often a triple win comes from a PPA change. In some cases, also from a change in promotion, where you can work with price differentiation between different weeks, where people with a low willingness to pay can buy cheaper in a promotion. Those with a higher willingness to pay buy whatever's available. So usually we get a triple win by moving this demand curve or this value curve here to the upper right corner. And this you typically don't achieve with price changes, but with changes or improvements in the portfolio, with new products, with changes in the PPA or other portfolio changes. So this is, I think, important to know that it's particularly in a single product case, it's typically not possible to achieve a triple win with just price changes. Let me just take before we go into the example, a very simple example or case that we did with a customer. It's based on a real case we did with a company that sells chocolate bars here, super anonymized, but the basic idea of the case still remained. So they were selling 4 packs at $8, so $2 per chocolate bar, and they were thinking about moving to a 5-pack with a higher price, but a decrease in the price per chocolate bar. And what we found by looking at a very large number of different PPA changes, price changes, that in this case, it was in the first instance, much better to not go to a 5-pack, but to stay at the 4-pack at $7. It benefited the manufacturer retailer, and they sold more because the price was decreased. But it could be done even better by introducing new SKUs and a much larger value pack. And in this case, these numbers are a bit anonymized, but they're roughly correct. It was possible to increase units almost by 50 or more than 50%, increase revenue by 13%. So overall, do much better for the manufacturer, for the retailer, who both properly split the benefit out of this, and also benefit the shoppers who in the end bought way more units than they would have bought otherwise. So this is just an example to highlight how we achieved in this example a triple win with our customers, and just to highlight that this is possible. And but it also shows that in this case it was possible because we introduced new pack sizes that allowed us to achieve this triple win here. And with that, skip this, or should we? Yeah, let's go to the demo already.
Perfect. And then let me quickly share my screen here.
So I need to unshare, or how do you do this?
I think I can. Yeah, I can send the request and you can accept it basically.
Wait.
And now I can share. I think it works. Yeah, can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, so like now as Ingo basically explained a little bit on the theory behind as well as the case study of the triple win. Now I wanted to show a little bit how that works now in the Buynomics tool. And the Buynomics tool ultimately lets you do 2 different types of analyses. We have the analytics and the decision guide, basically. So meaning we do predictive analytics and prescriptive analytics here on the left side. We will be spending the majority of time here in the analytics, on the prescriptive part. But I quickly wanted to show also the decision guide, just so that you get an idea of, from an optimization point of view, where we are coming from, and also what scenarios I'll be showing later. And the decision guide, so our optimizer basically helps our clients to optimize their pricing structure given certain target KPIs. So in this case here, we have chosen profit and revenue for the manufacturer, and every dot here really represents not just one product, but a full pricing strategy for the entire portfolio, meaning basically that here, when we would go with this pricing strategy, the profit impact would be around 13%, and the revenue impact would be around -5%. So this is basically our optimizer. And with that, as well as with our predictive capabilities, I have created a couple of scenarios for our triple win. And just to also explain you a little bit the analytics side of things, all of the analysis that we do, all of the optimizations that we do, they happen really on a very granular level to fully model the complexity of every market. So in this case here, we have, let's say, a rather simple market with 3 different retailers. In every retailer, we have a different portfolio structure of competitor products as well as own products. And these products live in the different weeks of the year, of course. So we really model on a quite granular level to achieve or to account for that complexity in the market. And that's also the level where any optimization is happening on. And given these informations, now I have run a couple of scenarios to basically see, okay, how can we get to a triple win, or what options can the tool find for optimizing, for example, the revenue. And how we consider the triple win is basically, as Ingo said before, the retailer needs to win in terms of revenue, the manufacturer needs to win in terms of revenue, and we use volume sold in the market as a proxy for how shoppers perceive the value. So if that increases as well, then we talk of a triple win. And what I've done now here, I've created 4 different scenarios, and I named them already accordingly, to showcase how can we find these different outcomes in terms of triple win for the 3 parties. And when we see here from a retailer perspective, since we look at retailer revenue, all of the 4 scenarios are actually a win. So in every case, the revenue of the retailer increases. So that's, let's say, a check. If we now go to the next view for the manufacturer, for the same 4 scenarios, we see already here that the single win scenario, as the name suggests, only leads to a win for the retailer, but actually the manufacturer is losing. In the double win scenario, there's a very slight edge. So super slightly, just a double win scenario here for the manufacturer and the retailer, and the other 2 are a little bit stronger, a little bit more clear. So in this case here, we can basically neglect the first scenario. And if we now look on our search for the triple win, if I wouldn't have named them already in the right way, then we would look at the volume from a shopper's perspective. And if we click now on volume, then here we can very nicely understand, okay, for those 4 scenarios, which ones actually generate value for the shopper. And as we suggest that, or we use as a KPI for a shopper value, then more volume sold. So if we have that an increase in revenue for the retailer, an increase in revenue for the manufacturer, and we're selling more volume, then we consider this one a triple win. And we can see that quite nicely here on these 2 scenarios, because on the 2 before, the shopper is actually purchasing less volume, meaning that retailer and manufacturer gain in revenue, but the shopper is not crazy content, but will actually reduce its volume that they're purchasing. And like this, basically every scenario that is being planned or tested can be analyzed for the triple win in the Buynomics tool, and very easily understood as well. So what scenarios do actually generate such a triple win, also given the entire competitive set in the market. Now, I would like to do a little deep dive on these 2 cases here. So the triple win for price, because here we have done only pricing actions to actually achieve a triple win, or the triple win here, and the triple win here for the product, where we actually done a product introduction and achieved a triple win with that one. So true innovation in a way. And if we now look at the first one, so the price change triple win based on price changes, then we dive into our table. Here we can now very nicely see for the own portfolio, here the blue products, basically, what prices would be suggested, or price changes here would be suggested, given that we have a base case and our optimized scenario from our solution to actually achieve that triple win. And we see here it's very diversified in terms of changes. So some products should actually be reduced in price, others should be increased in price, and some more, some less. And that leads ultimately then, when we scroll more to the right side here, to a revenue increase for the manufacturer, to a revenue increase for the retailer overall even, so across the entire portfolio, not just for the own products here where we did the changes, and also it leads to more volume sold here in an overall basis, which we consider the shopper win in this case. The nice thing about this type of optimization here is that it really considers the entire complexity of the market, as I showed in the beginning, including all of the interaction that happens here with competitors. So what we have done, if I scroll again to the left side to our prices, here the optimization on pricing has been done only on own products. Competitors' prices are basically unchanged. Let me scroll down as well. But the impact on revenue here is basically including competitors. So the full interaction in the market, or the full interaction that shoppers create by actually switching from one product to another, including from the own brand here to the competitor, is included here, which makes this triple win scenario a very robust one because it does consider the full complexity of the market. That's basically one option to achieve the triple win here via the pricing lever. Of course, there's also other RGM levers to pull with which we can create such a triple win. And one would be, for example, product innovation or product portfolio changes. If we go to that one, when you remember, we had these two triple win scenarios. So we had the price change triple win and the product introduction triple win. This one here is now the second one. Again, if I scroll to the very left, here we see basically on an average level, prices slightly changing in terms of realized prices. This is not because there's price changes happening, but this is because there's a change in mix of this portfolio. So people basically buy that portfolio now differently than they did before because we introduced here a new product into the market. So before, the product didn't exist. And now, in this new scenario here, the product actually exists, it has a price, and it creates unit sales. And these created unit sales basically interact with the rest of the portfolio, so pull more or less of units onto this new product, which leads, of course, then here to a change in mix, which on average results in a price change. And with this new product in the market, we can then observe here again the manufacturer as well as the retailer revenue. And we see again, for manufacturer, this looks very positive because we considered here a very similar distribution of that product. For the retailer, also positive. And here for the shoppers, they are also positively impacted because we see again, retailer revenue increased, manufacturer revenue increased, as well as the volume in the market that is increased. And I think overall, achieving the triple win is something that is quite tricky without having the right tools to actually understand what will happen in the market. And that's basically what we try to help with, or where we try to give the right transparency. And of course, this can be achieved with several types of levers. So we have now used the price change as well as the product introduction, but a mix out of the different levers, of course, can also lead to a maybe much better triple win, including also some optimization on the promotional side, and bringing all of the different levers then together in like a holistic kind of scenario that will then really unlock the right the right effects for such a triple win. And the Buynomics solution can help identifying which of these combined scenarios actually result in such a triple win. This being said, of course, pricing is at the sole discretion of the retailer. So the Buynomics solution is basically suggesting only transparency in the market. Ingo, anything that you would like to add to this case?
No, thanks, Tim. I think it was a very comprehensive overview. And I think maybe just one small thing to add is that you can also see how the changes that you make affect the sales a retailer has with competitor products, for example, right? So it might be that an increase in your sales comes at the expense of sales from a competitor. And you can see at least that on the total revenue and units level, the impact. Of course, you don't know the details on terms and everything, but you can, if you work with assumptions, you can also get an understanding of like the much better understanding of the total retailer view, to really understand the situation. So that's really what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's extremely critical. Also, given that the markets are very volatile and also competition changes prices quite regularly. So this can all basically be factored in here and be part of that type of triple win analysis. Yeah, very good point.
All right. Thanks. And let me just come back. Do you see presentation mode again?
Yep.
Perfect. So I think we still have a few minutes. Then, yeah, let's quickly wrap up here. So just to summarize, that what we've been talking about. So how to succeed and what are the conditions for a triple win? As we said, they're essentially two dimensions. One is the joint the joint retailer manufacturer relationship towards the shopper, which we have here, and where we see, okay, to achieve a triple win, more volume or more units need to be achieved, more revenue, that there can be a total benefit. If there's no increase overall achieved, then of course it's difficult to achieve a triple win. If it's achieved, then at least someone wins. But who depends really also on the split, as we discussed, between manufacturer and retailer. So is it that a change in pricing or PPA can be designed in a way that retailers and manufacturers win? And if that is the case, so that we have an overall increase and we have a proper split between manufacturer and retailers, that we really are in a position to achieve a triple win. If one of these conditions isn't met, then at least then if nothing's achieved, then of course no one wins. But in the other cases, at least some party can win. And with this, I want to hand over to Jonathan for our second question.
Ha, I thought we forgot it already, but we have a second poll. Let me open it. Launching it, and the question for everybody joining by phone: how mature is your organization's approach to triple win? After you listen to us talk for 38 minutes, the answer options are: we mostly optimize for manufacturer only. We collaborate with retailers, but shoppers are secondary. We aim for win-win-win, but struggle to operationalize it. And we have a clear triple win strategy in place. People are answering. Perfect. We're at 40% participation rate. Let's get to 50 in the next 10, 15 seconds. And then I share the results with the audience today. Okay. Last chance to log in, and I'm ending the poll now and sharing the results. Preference for the middle option, right? What did you expect?
For sure. So yeah, I mean, and that's again in line with, I think, what I expect. So we aim for triple win, but struggle to operationalize. I think if you're serious, about it, you should reach out to us afterwards. I hope we could present we presented a way to support in this. Collaborate with retailers, but shoppers are secondary. And yeah, I think those are the two answers that I would expect it to be mostly given. Tim, disagree or agree?
100% agree. I think, yeah, it's pretty clear that I think the hardest thing is really to operationalize it, and the second hardest is to really understand what will the shoppers do, or how will the shoppers benefit. I think, yeah, very much clear.
Makes sense. All right. So with this quick summary, so what have we discussed? What are the key results? I think first one is, as we showed, if you're just living in a single product world, which most of us don't, but we're mentioning it because that's the typical theoretical case that's been looked at. It's difficult. Almost always you cannot achieve a triple win with just price changes. For a full portfolio, it's doable. If prices are off here and there, there's some potential, but most potential comes from improvements of the overall portfolio, or product innovations. So when you introduce new products, new pack sizes, so that everyone can win from it. I think those are the cases we discussed in this webinar. It's also possible to achieve a triple win with changes in promotions. We didn't discuss this. It's a bit more complicated, but it's possible. If you're interested, happy to show you how that can be done. But this is, I think, from our point of view, the overview, and I think the key message, which Tim showed in the demo, is, of course, in reality it's much more complicated, and there are lots of interactions between products, between different between weeks, retailers, and so on. And to properly make an improvement, I think a detailed analysis like the one Tim outlined often makes a lot of sense. At least in the cases we work with, we see that with our customers, that with proper analytics, win-win-win cases can be identified, like the case that I showed with the chocolate bars. If you're interested, we put together not just this webinar, but a short infographic that's available on our website, free download. I think Jonathan will put the link into the chat. So if you want to read some of the stuff we discussed, that's a place to go. And with that, Jonathan, we'll rely on your input again to read the questions.
Yes, we have a couple of questions that came in over the past 30 minutes. Let me start with one from Natalia. Both manufacturers and retailers more easily align with consumers creating value, while manufacturers/retailers competing agendas often create friction. If aiming to transform tension into collaboration, what kinds of consumer data would you consider? Where should it come from?
Tim, you want to go first?
Yeah, I can go first. I think it's a very, very good question. I don't think there's like the one data source necessarily, and these tension. So maybe to start off with the tension per se. So the tension is typically coming from like not knowing exactly how scenarios will play out, and everybody wants to kind of get their sheeps inside the house in a way. So they want to basically lock in their wins. And for that, they negotiate extremely hard. So Ingo mentioned it already. It's some sort of a prisoner's dilemma that basically both parties try to optimize for themselves. And the best thing, or the clearest thing to do, is there achieving transparency on the effects and using for that very advanced analytics that actually help show both sides what the result will be in a complex market when they follow a certain strategy, and that can then like when a certain strategy would then lead to a triple win, this transparency on that outcome can help definitely with the negotiations. So that would be my answer. And tools for that can be Buynomics as an example.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure if it's about the data. So what we're seeing is that many companies have like the sufficient data, but what's helpful and what we showed here is like the sort of the credible transparency, where you can show, okay, these are the effects for both sides after a change, and making transparent and what that means for everyone, and then also like providing options in how to deal with like asymmetries in the benefits. I think that's what we see helps a lot in these conversations.
Thank you so much. Second question on the triple win in a B2B to C business model. Will the triple win work in B2B and B2B to B?
So in general, so when I can start the answer, so in general, yes, I mean, like pure B2B would not necessarily consider like the triple win, because there would be a double win because only two parties are involved. If it's B2B to B, it depends slightly on the market, but normally when there's a certain value chain, then this value chain can be optimized so that all of the participants basically gain without like having individual optima for one of the participants of that value chain. So generally, it's possible in the sole B2B case. It's difficult because there's not a third party.
Yeah, agree.
Perfect. And then let's skip to the last question, and the other ones we will answer after the webinar session. We will send you our answers to your questions. A message from Carmen. How exactly does Buynomics create its virtual shoppers, and what data do they learn from?
Yeah. I can also quickly take that. So Buynomics creates its virtual shoppers via training basically, and the data that we need to train our virtual shoppers to actually behave like the shoppers in the real market, because that's what we are doing. We're creating this digital twin of the market, and for that we need to train them on typically market data such as sellout data and product data, which are the most common sources of data, but we can also train to a degree on panel data, on sell-in data in certain markets where we have like steady inventory and a lot of buyers, typically traditional trade, and we can also use additional information or additional service such as conjoins and so on to integrate for the training. But the main two data sources, if you ask me, the most common one is sellout data and product data.
Okay, thank you so much. And next week, and this way we're already getting to the final part of this webinar. Next week we will have a more detailed session on the Buynomics platform, on our virtual shoppers AI technology, together with you again, Tim, and Ivan, our head of innovation, director of innovation. I put the link into the chat, so please register. It would be nice to see you all again. And with that, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you, Ingo. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, everybody that joined. And we hope to catch you in the next one. And we hope you have a great rest of the week.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.